Ladies and gentlemen, this is breaking news. President Trump rejects request to testify at Senate impeachment trial. He's not going to testify because he didn't do anything, he didn't break any laws. So why on earth should he testify? It's not like Clinton who said, "Oh, I never had relations." Oh, what is? I mean, come on. What are you talking about? I mean, is I having relations? No. Well, then there you go. What law did I break? Well, you committed perjury. Clinton committed perjury, obstruction of justice. He was convicted in the House of Representatives, impeached, and the Senate acquitted him. But those were legal statutes that he broke. President Trump did not break any legal statutes. He's protected under the First Amendment. The Attorney General of Washington, D.C., and the Mayor of Washington, D.C. have not leveled criminal charges against Trump. Why? One would think they would be at the forefront of leveling any charges, any indictment against President Trump. He's no longer sitting president. So then they who was it? It was one of the Harvard professors, not Alan Dershowitz, who defends President Trump, but the other one, who said, "Oh, of course, a sitting president can be indicted, and there's nothing in the Constitution that protects a sitting president." Well, okay, they never indicted Trump on any charge because he didn't commit any crimes. Not in the first impeachment, which was based on an ellipsis, and even President Zelensky a couple weeks ago said, "Yeah, I'm completely offended that the Democratic Party would assume that I was strong-armed or forced to do something against my will by President Trump." He never forced anyone to do anything. He never leveraged any military assistance. The whole thing, we now know that the federal government is investigating his son Caligula. So he was impeached for what the federal government is doing right now, because his son Caligula gained money because of the family name, as did his brother, the uncle. But anyway, the New York Post already ran that story. There's an endless stream of incriminating emails, which of course Twitter then suppressed. But he's not going to testify. This is political theater. What they want to do is just hype this irrelevant, unconstitutional, because John Roberts isn't even going to be there. So, and then you have a survey that I'm going to get to where this is basically a political trap set for the Republican Party, where 2/3 of Republicans would leave the GOP for Trump. I'll get to that in a second. But hit subscribe to this channel right now. Ladies and gentlemen, we're on our way to 200,000 subscribers. This is a very difficult time for content creators, ladies and gentlemen. It is a difficult time. I am always doing my best to follow every possible rule and regulation. That's why I just had a meeting with my YouTube representative, and I'm always in pristine standing because I understand what words I can use, what words I can't use, what things I can talk about, what things I can't talk about. I try to talk about everything, but I do so in a long-winded manner. So that's why I'm so long-winded, because there's like a database of words that I can't say in my mind. And what's taking place, and you're seeing this, ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of really good people. Even though I support President Trump, I come from the left. There are a lot of very good left-leaning voices that their channels have been, completely crushed because of what's going on right now. And it started with President Trump, and when Twitter banned President Trump, and they utilized the horrendous tragedy, what took place, to blame Trump. I said the left and Democrats are fine with this, but the left should not be happy because the Democratic Party media will eventually come after them, and that's happening, and it's unfortunate. I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see voices silenced. I like debate and discussion. And you're seeing what's taking place on the left. A lot of left-leaning channels and pundits don't realize that you can't say certain words, especially within the title. And you know, whether it's profanity or certain words, if you want to talk about certain topics, you certainly can't put that within the title. But again, I'm not justifying, you know, what's taking place. I'm just explaining that there are certain things you have to do on YouTube. And if you don't do them, especially nowadays, because there's no leeway. That's why a lot of my titles are like boring. They don't sound as, you know, as interesting as other titles. But anyway, that's just one element of what's going on. So if you want to support my voice, my Patreon is below. You my new Patreons, thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you can go to hagoodman.com, read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, and you can see my debates. Speaking of one of my debates, I told you that the message board was nonsense, detrimental, ruinous, the worst, absurd, most dangerous hoax that could ever be leveled against a political movement. I told you that 2 years ago. Now we're seeing what happened. I told you what you could see what's taking place. It's a political disaster now with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's completely disavowed that absurd, dangerous hoax of a message board. I told you that is the worst thing possible. And, ladies and gentlemen, when I told people 2 years ago, listen to me, hear me now, believe me later. I told you, if you know that reference, you're awesome. I told you 2 years ago, I said, it's a complete hoax. I debated Jordan Sather, and I went on and on about how it's dangerous. I lost, within a week, 1,000+ subs, okay? I got them all back within the next month. But I'm not always going to give you, you know, I'm not always going to give people exactly what they want to hear, but the vast majority of my viewers don't listen to that nonsense, obviously. But there are good people who get, get lured into these absurd message boards. It's message boards, unfortunately, are like an addiction to a lot of people. They want to see what takes it. Twitter has this. That's like one of the alluring qualities of that, you know, boiling pot of discontent, which will eventually tank. There's an addictive quality to these things, or an addictive aspect, and it's just there's no good that comes from message boards, and we're seeing that right now. Look up what's taking place with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And President Trump and Trump Republicans know that there's no point in going down with that ship. So I told you. But ladies and gentlemen, President Trump rejected the request to testify in the Senate impeachment trial. He's going to be acquitted. He's going to be acquitted. This is a certainty. And not only will he be acquitted, John Roberts will not preside, and John Roberts will not preside. He will be acquitted. There haven't been charges leveled against him. It was a tragedy. The loss of life was an absolute tragic disaster. Like the real horror or tragedy is that the loss of life. Those 5 people should be alive today. But Democrats are not speaking, and God bless that officer. But Democrats are not speaking about the 4 other people, okay, who were supporters of President Trump, who did not do anything because Trump told them. See, unfortunately, people are swayed by, like a lot of people perhaps didn't even know what was really going on. But people tried to make a point that was not thought out and was so detrimental. It was the loss of life was the main issue. Those people should be alive today, and those families are grieving right now. because of an impulsive act by people that did not do what they did because of President Trump. So God bless the families who are grieving. It was a tragedy because of the loss of life, but it had nothing to do with Trump telling them to do anything. Democrats have tried to utilize this as directly Trump's fault when they don't say that the Lincoln Project is responsible for all the lives lost from Iraq and Afghanistan and every military intervention. And President Obama is not responsible for the lives lost in Libya. They don't utilize the same logic against themselves that they level against Trump. But there's a really interesting article here. Nearly 2/3 of Republicans say they would likely leave party if Trump starts a new one. Ladies and gentlemen, the political trap is the following. In 2022, you have virtually just Trump Republicans taking over the House. If that doesn't happen, and you have Mitt Romney or Ben Sasse or a couple other of the Republicans or Liz Cheney continuing to try to harass Trump or oppose him. I love when people say, like, I oppose him. I've had people tell me, I'm opposing you. I'm standing up and opposing you. Your arguments are crap, and you don't have anything to say other than whatever CNN and MSNBC regurgitate from the Washington Post and New York Times, which oftentimes is a repackaged propaganda spin from intelligence operatives. So what you have no argument. I'm voting for President Trump, or I voted for President Trump because of foreign policy and other issues, but primarily because I want him to reverse U.S. foreign policy. I want Americans home from never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. If you explain this, they don't even know what a counterinsurgency conflict is, nor do they care. Democrats do not care. If you just said climate change, they'd be okay and they'd move on their merry way. But if you said, no, I'm supporting President Trump because I want an end to never-ending regime changes and interventions and counterinsurgency conflicts, they look at you with this glazed look. And then they don't listen. Then they continue just, yelling. It's like basically you might as well argue with a wall. Bottom line is, nobody really understands why President Trump is popular. Like Democrats, media, MSNBC, they had John Heilman at MSNBC saying, "Oh yeah, the Trump is Republicans have a Trump problem," and it's like, no, it's the Democrats. The Democrats have a problem understanding why in 2016 President Trump won, and why he's so popular even after a second impeachment. Nobody cares about Democratic Party outrage. Yes, it was a tragedy in Washington. Yes, it wasn't directly Trump's fault. He wasn't legally responsible. John Roberts isn't even presiding over the trial. He will be acquitted. They're trying to extract every single ounce of political utility from this. And it's not going to help the Democratic Party. You can impeach Trump 30 times from here until 2024. If he decides to run again, he will easily, without any obstacles in his way, become the GOP nominee. If Mitt Romney became the GOP nominee, Trump didn't run because Trump would obliterate and annihilate anyone in his way, including Mittens. But if he didn't, and Romney or Ben Sasse were the nominee, I would enjoy Republicans getting completely pummeled by Democrats. Because the same advantages they had with Trump are the same advantages they'll have until the Republican Party becomes until Trump completely controls it, which is a good thing. It doesn't mean that you'll have Marjorie Taylor Greene running the political party, okay? Trump is not Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's not. Trump has nothing to do with a message board Q nonsense, dangerous hoax. Trump has nothing to do with, he did not tell people to commit those heinous acts. And it's interesting, I was watching a debate a couple years ago, and it was on ESPN, and it was Max Kellerman, Stephen A. Smith, and Will Cain. And, okay, I don't know why Will Cain simply didn't, because Max Kellerman was saying, well, this is a time of moral clarity. And it was why one of the Warriors didn't want to go, or the Warriors didn't want to go to the White House. Or Kevin Durant, didn't want to go to the White House. And that's fine. That's someone's viewpoint, or like an individual viewpoint. Anyone can decide whether to go or not go. Will Cain was talking about, well, he's the president of the United States. You know, politics should be out of sports. And then Max Kellerman said, well, this is a time of moral clarity, a time of moral clarity where there's good and bad. And, you know, there's not many times in human history, but when there are, you know, when there's good and bad. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, is that media for years has said that what took place, that Trump said both sides had fine people. He never said that. He never said that the 1930s and 1940s Germans were fine people. Within the C-SPAN quote, he said, and I am not speaking of the 1930s and 1940s Germans. He literally stated, I'm not speaking of those people in the C-SPAN quote. Go to C-SPAN. You could see them. You could see him speaking, and you could see the actual quote on C-SPAN. He did not call the racists or the bigots fine people. He was talking about conservatives who wanted to keep statues up. There are people of all backgrounds who want to keep statues up. That's a political debate. That's a political debate and discussion. Okay? But you have this situation where even ESPN and Max Kellerman said, well, this is a situation of moral clarity. So anyone who doesn't want to be associated with Trump, they're making the right decision. History will judge them kindly. If history looks at Trump, President Trump was the first president, the only president to allocate more funding. He allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. He signed the First Step Act. It was President Obama who destroyed Libya with a failed NATO intervention. It was President Obama who drank Flint water and said it was safe to drink. Trump should never have insulted NFL athletes. He should never have insulted LeBron James. This is true. But his actions were far better than President Obama's actions, whose failed NATO intervention and regime change destroyed a country. Actually destroyed a nation and a country. Okay? There are human beings being bought and sold now in Libya, and there are many articles talking about it's President Obama's foreign policy, his regime change that led to that. So you have a media, even sports media, saying, okay, the good things Trump does, that's not as bad as, that's not enough. Those accomplishments are not enough to overcome his detrimental words. That same media, including sports and obviously political media, says President Obama's missteps, even though they led to a country turning into a failed state, an entire country in Libya. There are articles, how a well-meaning intervention, turned to tragedy. That was a foreign affairs article. Could you imagine if an article like that was written about Trump? Trump had nothing to do with the protests that people say, oh, he said both sides. He had nothing to do with that. He didn't get people to do anything horrible. Those horrible people existed. They existed all throughout President Obama and Bush and every other presidency. And then if you want to make the argument, oh, well, he incites them. He compels them. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Media is just waiting for any opportunity. Those people marched all throughout President Obama's administration also. They got no media play. You want to know how I found out who Richard Spencer was? I never knew who he was. It was a Slate article in 2016 after President Trump won. I had no clue who this man was. I debated him, and I defeated his hate-filled ideas in a debate. Watch the last 20 minutes of the debate. You will love it. Okay? But I debated Richard Spencer. I defeated his ideas using reason and logic, not apoplectic outrage, which doesn't defeat anything. So So, but see, again, I wouldn't see the media spin is Trump's accomplishments. He had record low Black and Latino unemployment. First Step Act allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities, economic opportunity zones. You can say, well, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. He's a supremacist. Well, a supremacist wouldn't do those things. The rebuttal then is, well, supremacists could do those things. Sure. No, a supremacist won't. No, a supremacist won't do those things. That's not what a supremacist actually would destroy a country in North Africa. That's what somebody like that would do, which is what the Democrats did. So there's nothing that President Trump has done as bad or as worse or as tragic or as horrific as President Obama's NATO intervention that caused a country to become a failed state and a decade of sorrow and suffering in that country. Okay, with two different factions now vying for a decade, vying for political control, civil war. My point is, Will Cain should have simply said, Trump has nothing to do with racists and bigots. It's nothing to do. And if Kevin Durant or anybody didn't want to go to the White House, that's their decision. President Trump shouldn't have made an issue. So there were missteps with Trump. Trump fed into the hysteria. So that was the missteps. The missteps that he fed into the hysteria. He took a giant bat and whacked a hornet's nest of liberal outrage. So you had all these apoplectic, hysterical, fanatical, morally superior liberals saying, oh my God, look, this is just like the 1930s and 1940s. Look, it's just the same. Like, no, it's not. That's why Yad Vashem had to refute AOC. I wrote about that in the Jerusalem Post. They condemned AOC. Why? They said, learn more about the topic. Why? Because what she said was horrendous. A revisionist history. That was truly, truly offensive and horrendous. But of course, Democrats get away with everything. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Ladies and gentlemen, 2/3 of Republicans would go with Trump out of the Republican Party. That is the trap that's set. I don't know if I spent enough time on that, but give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe